Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the most, if not the most, defining moments in early Islamic history. We're going to impartially look at the historical accounts, the deeply tragic events, and the absolutely profound legacy of the Battle of Karbala. Now, whether you already know this history inside out or you're just looking to structure your understanding, we're going to walk through exactly what went down on those desert plains back in the year 680 CE.
So here's the big question. Why on earth did an army of thousands feel the need to march against just 72 men? I mean, it's a staggering disparity, right? This wasn't your standard military clash between two equal armies. It was a severe, heavily mismatched siege. And understanding how we even got to this incredible imbalance, well, that's the key to understanding Karbala as the ultimate historical test of loyalty, faith, and ultimately sacrifice.
Now, what's really interesting about this is just how fast things escalated. The spark was ignited when Imam Husayn, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, flat out refused to pledge allegiance to the new Umayyad Caliph Yazid I. Following this refusal, Husayn leaves Medina. He eventually heads toward Kufa. This is a town in Iraq where the people had actually sent thousands of letters begging him to come lead them. But he never actually makes it. His caravan is intercepted right in the middle of the desert by the caliph's vanguard, and they're forced to set up camp in the barren plain of Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer physical reality of the standoff. It's honestly mind-boggling. On one side, you've got Imam Husayn's camp. We're talking roughly 72 devoted fighters, plus his own family, women, young children, and infants. On the flip side, the Umayyad army, under Umar bin Saad. What started as a 1,000-man vanguard practically overnight swelled into this massive, heavily armed military force. Estimates put them anywhere from 4,000 to 20,000 troops. So the imbalance here wasn't just tactical, it was absolute. But before any swords were actually drawn, there was a real attempt to avoid bloodshed. Historical sources point out that Imam Husayn put forward 3 different proposals to settle things peacefully. He offered to just go back to Mecca, or relocate to a distant border post, or even meet with Yazid face-to-face to hash it out. But the Umayyad governor, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he rejected every single term. He wanted one thing and one thing only: Husayn's unconditional submission to his authority. And for Imam Husayn, that was a total deal-breaker. So, to force his hand, the Umayyad leadership decided to use the environment itself as a weapon. They sent out exactly 500 cavalry troops with one specific, devastating job: to completely block Husayn's camp from getting anywhere near the Euphrates River.
Which brings us to the 7th of Muharram. With those 500 horsemen guarding the riverbanks, this brutal water blockade officially kicks off. Just picture the Iraqi desert heats. It is absolutely scorching. And for 3 agonizing days, not a single drop of water makes it into Husayn's camp. Obviously, the soldiers are suffering, but the real tragedy here is the non-combatants, the women and the nursing infants who are trapped inside those tents. According to the historical accounts, it got to the point where the cries of el-atash, which translates to thirst, were literally echoing through the camp from the children. The situation was just incredibly desperate. And that's when Husayn's fiercely loyal brother, Abbas, stepped up. He grabbed the flag and, against all odds, actually managed to fight his way to the river at one point to bring water back for the kids. It's a moment that completely cemented his legacy as this ultimate symbol of bravery and devotion. Let's move on and see how this builds, because the tension really hits a boiling point on Tasu'a, the 9th of Muharram. The siege gets even tighter when a ruthless commander named Shimr shows up. He's got direct orders from the governor. If Umar bin Saad doesn't attack Husayn immediately, Shimr is supposed to take over the army and do it himself. They actually offered safe conduct to our boss and his brothers, but they turned it down flat. At this point, everyone on both sides knows that a battle is absolutely inevitable. So, that evening, what we now call the night of Ashura, Imam Husayn gathers his tiny band of followers. And in this incredibly profound display of leadership, he actually extinguishes the lamps in the camp. He tells his guys, look, the enemy only wants my blood. They don't care about you. And under the cover of darkness, he basically gives them a free pass to leave. No guilt, no strings attached. He was testing their loyalty in the most extreme way imaginable. But here's the thing. Not a single person left. Not one. Instead, they responded with this deep, rock-solid devotion. Muslim bin Ausaja famously spoke up, basically saying that even if he were killed, his body burned to ashes, and he was brought back to life 70 times over, he still wouldn't leave Husayn. They knew tomorrow meant certain death, but they actively chose to stay. The texts from the time describe the vibe in the camp that final night as sounding like the buzzing of bees. Because rather than panicking or trying to run away, these 72 men spent their last hours on Earth in intense, focused devotion. They're reciting the Quran, they're praying, basically getting their souls ready for the sacrifice that was coming with the sunrise.
But hey, they weren't just praying. They were incredibly practical about this too. Hussein's camp took some brilliant tactical steps to protect their flanks, considering how heavily outnumbered they were. First, they tied all their tents super close together to create a physical barrier. Then, they dug this trench right behind the tents and filled it up with wood. Their plan was to set that wood on fire at dawn. This essentially neutralized any threat from behind, forcing that massive Umayyad army to only attack them head-on. And then, the sun comes up, it's Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, and the fighting begins. Now, despite being ridiculously outnumbered, Hussein's cavalry fought like lions. When their horses went down, they just got off and kept fighting on foot. Some accounts even say that in close combat, Hussein's guys were actually winning against their opponents, forcing the Umayyad soldiers to fall back multiple times throughout that morning.
But eventually, the sheer math catches up to you. As the battle drags on past noon, the real agony of the day sets in. Hussein's loyal companions are systematically surrounded and cut down. To break their defensive line, the opposing army literally sets their tents on fire. And one by one, Hussein loses his closest family members. His beloved brother Abbas is martyred trying to get more water. His young son Ali Akbar, who people said looked remarkably like the Prophet, is killed. The emotional toll here is just as staggering as the physical reality. And there's perhaps no detail more gut-wrenching in these historical accounts than the fate of Hussein's infant son. With absolutely no water left in the camp, Hussein brings his 6-month-old baby, Ali Asghar, out toward the enemy lines, just pleading for a few drops of water for the child. And the opposing army's response? They shoot a heavy arrow that pierces the infant's neck. It's a devastating story, but it starkly highlights the absolute brutality of the besieging forces and the unyielding tragedy of that day.
So the crucial point here is that the horror didn't just stop when Imam Husayn was finally martyred. The historical texts give us this incredibly grim look at what happened immediately after he fell. His body was systematically looted by the opposing soldiers. We're talking everything: his clothes, his sword, his turban, even his ring, all stripped away as the victors just casually claimed their spoils of war. The aftermath was practically an exercise in total subjugation. Those remaining tents, the ones holding the grieving widows and orphans, looted. On direct orders from the governor, 10 volunteer horsemen literally trampled Imam Husayn's body. The 72 martyrs were beheaded, and their heads were shipped off to Kufa as gruesome trophies. And the survivors, these exhausted, thirsty women and children, were chained up and taken away as captives. But, the story really doesn't end in the dust of Karbala. Those captives were marched from Karbala to Kufa and eventually dragged all the way to the caliph's court in Syria. Among them were Hussein's sister, Lady Zainab, and his ailing son, Imam Sajjad. And even though they were paraded in chains, they used this harrowing journey to their advantage. They delivered these incredibly powerful speeches, fearlessly confronting their captors and making absolutely sure that the true story of what happened at Karbala reached the very heart of the Umayyad Caliphate. And what they achieved through that sacrifice and their voices, it's nothing short of monumental. The Battle of Karbala completely galvanized the collective memory of the Shia, shaping a unique religious identity that's totally centered on sacrificing for justice and truth against tyranny. Fast forward to today, and it sparks this massive annual 10-day mourning period during Muharram. You see public processions, passion plays, and this beautiful tradition of handing out food to the community. Plus, it's deeply respected as a profound historical tragedy by Sunni Muslims everywhere too. And the remembrance actually goes even further. 40 days after the tragedy, millions commemorate what's known as Arba'in. Today, it is literally one of the largest peaceful annual gatherings on the planet. Millions of people march on foot to the shrine of Imam Husayn in Karbala. This totally cements the event's central place, not just in ancient theology, but in a living, breathing, modern tradition. Which leaves us with this final, remarkable thought to chew on. If you look at it strictly in military terms, Karbala was a total, devastating defeat. And yet, how does a battle lost by just 72 men, all the way back in the year 680 CE, continue to win the hearts, minds, and tears of millions of people across the globe, over 1,300 years later? It really speaks to the immense, lasting power of standing firm for justice. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gave you a clearer, more structured view into a moment that forever changed history.